You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm James Payne, your host, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Dalton Gray.
How are you doing?
Awesome. And Mariah Humphreys.
Man, always the second.
I'll fix that in the next one if you want.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Well, just go ahead and redo it.
I'm here with my co-host, Mariah Humphreys.
Man, I'm first. Wow.
And we'll leave it up in the air
It's good to
with
be
what's
here.
going to happen next week. So.
Introduce me. All right. Hey, introduce me.
Oh, and Dalton Gray.
Oh,
for those
hi.
that
Thank
didn't know
you.
he was
Yes.
here.
All right.
Yes.
If you
Here we
couldn't
go.
tell.
Here we go.
I had no clue if you were going to tell him I was here.
For those who can't tell, I do have a minority complex.
Easy.
It's just alphabetical, man.
So speaking of politics,
No.
Wow.
So we are going to dive into a little bit more of listener questions, Q&A kind of stuff, because the last episode got a lot long-winded. It really, we went off on a couple side tangents, and I think it was all great, but we had 3 questions we weren't able to get to.
Yeah.
And we really want to get caught up on this because that's kind of it's kind of the whole point of the show, is to just kind of be informational, educational. And if you guys have questions, we love answering them. Some of them make our brains hurt a little bit. You know, looking at them, and we have to actually think about it before we give you an answer.
Like feral cow hunting.
hunting.
Yeah.
And
That was awesome.
And then they're super fun, super awesome. So we love getting listener feedback. And so we're going to dive into those. But before we get too far into that, I have a slight announcement to make here. If you notice in the last episode that my voice was going a little bit in and out every once in a while, the reason for that is we are upgrading our studio here, and we are going to be getting some new gear, and we're going to start actually being able to bring people on the show, and we're really excited to bring that for you guys. But I have a lot of learning to do as far as mic etiquette goes.
Got a lot. I'm gonna have my work cut out with these guys, teaching them how to use a mic.
Yeah.
I'm really trying, so I apologize if I sound echoey or in the background. I'm just leaning back like I'm used to being able to do. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so big things are coming. We're real excited for it. We hope you guys are too. So,
Yeah.
And Dalton, I believe you had a topic you wanted to cover.
Yeah, just kind of an introductory little subtopic that I wanted to touch on here. I was informed, we'll just say, I read it in a few different places on Rockslide and other places on some media, and then I heard some other folks talking about it in the industry, and I figured it was kind of worth not a full-on conversation about this particular incident. There is an outdoor brand, Seek Outside. I'm not gonna throw any names around. People can figure it out pretty easily if you just want to look it up. But some of the ownership there at Seek Outside, they make ultralight backpacking, TP tents and ultralight stoves, and it really high quality USA made products for outdoorsmen.
Now, is this like a hunting line, or more just kind of an outdoors in general
It can go either way.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just an ultralight camping solution for a shelter that doesn't compromise a lot of space and weight in your pack.
Yeah.
And they do sell a lot to the hunting market, and they also sell a lot to kind of just the backpacker,
mountaineering, things like that.
Yeah, just kind of adventurous type of camping people. And a couple of the owners, as I was made aware, made some social media posts that were very politically aligned with some anti-gun and anti-hunting views. We can just say it that way. And they ended up deleting their social media off the platform that they used.
Really?
And
that's a big move.
Yeah, it's caused a lot of a stir in the hunting community that I've seen in just kind of my little circle of people that I follow and keep up with. And I didn't want to bring this up to hash all that out, but it just brought to mind a few things that I've noticed over the last couple of years in the industry. And that is brand affiliation and sort of a hierarchy, if you will, within the hunting industry about people that use different brands of stuff. And it really, it's difficult. It's difficult not to do just because, okay, let's just give the example of, let's just say, Kuiu versus Stone Glacier.
Okay.
2 very prestigiously known ultralight outdoor equipment companies. They,
Right.
they make everything from backpacks to tents to sleeping bags to rain gear and insulation.
Arguably two of the bigger names in the industry.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, absolutely.
Definitely two of the
And-
better names in the industry.
Yeah.
Yes. And, a lot of people that would wear, let's just say, KUIU, follow a lot of the KUIU reps and the KUIU team of people
Right.
that promote KUIU as the best. And that's great. That's part of having a business. You want folks to believe in your product, and
Right.
they do make good products. That's all part of it. And I'm not against that at all. But almost subconsciously, you find yourself looking down at other brands. And that in and of itself is okay. But when you encounter somebody, say at a local event, let's just say a sportsman's banquet, and they
Right.
sit down at your table and they're wearing Stone Glacier and you're wearing KUIU, instead of it being, hey, yeah, you must be a mountain hunter too because you have this brand of gear, and then you find a common ground, people are more inclined to be, let's just say, disaster oriented,
Confrontational.
and they just like, well, yeah, you peasant, you have on Stone Glacier or you have on KUIU, so you must be one of
Right.
those KUIU fanboys,
Yeah.
And it creates division within an industry that I believe is being attacked more now than ever from the public. And hunting rights and gun rights, we are all well aware, are well under attack in our country.
More than ever.
If you look south of the border from us, our neighbors to the south, Canada, that they have essentially banned all firearms with the exception of hunting, and all that is heavily permitted and regulated. No more handguns.
Yeah.
Trudeau came out and flat out said you cannot use a handgun or any firearm for self-defense in Canada.
Yeah.
And there is a huge movement in the United States for more gun control, and people are against hunting. It's unethical, it's cruel, it's inhumane. And
and real quick to tell you how close we are to that.
Yeah.
My wife has a friend that she went to college with that that was from Canada and moved back to Canada after college. And she was, when all these bans were coming about and the new gun laws coming out, she was going to get it was a Ruger Mini 14
Okay.
that this friend in Canada had that she's going to send up to my wife. And so the importation, process there, you got to go through all this paperwork and everything like that.
Right.
It got denied entry
Really?
to the U.S.
Wow.
Because, and the only reason for the denial was that there was not a designated sporting reason to own it.
Wow.
That's a Ruger Mini 14. That's just a 5.56.
That's just a semi-automatic
semi-automatic rifle.
It's not even an AR style platform.
No, it takes AR mags, but that's it.
Right,
It's
right.
its own thing. And so the American side is the one that denied it, not the Canadian side. So we're not far behind.
Wow. That's terrible. But, just along those lines, the hunting industry, like I said, as a whole is under attack.
Yeah.
And we see federal overreach in Alaska over the last few years, shutting down a bunch of federal land to hunting. And while they may say that it is for biological reasons and population control and helping the animals out, what happened with the Great Carter land grab in the 80s?
Yeah.
Carter annexed all of this land in Alaska and made it national parks, and it's federally controlled. And that is meant to be controlled by the state, not the federal government. And we haven't seen any hunting in those parks ever since then, and I don't think we ever will.
Right.
And that being said, with all of these other much more important things going on, the last thing that we as hunters need to be doing is ostracizing one another based off of brands that we wear.
Brands or off of hunting styles.
Yeah.
Methods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great point. People that are mountain hunters look down on tree stand hunters.
Yeah.
And people that are tree stand hunters look down on long range hunters.
And people that are spot and stock for bears look down on bear baiters.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And arguably, bear baiting is probably one of the bigger controversy topics.
Yeah.
Because
huge. It's huge.
Even within the hunting industry, I want to say, I read a statistic one time that said it was like 50% of hunters don't agree with bear baiting.
Yeah.
Or the use of hounds or the use of, and a lot of it comes from, either not understanding the method. Like
Yeah.
a lot of the people that don't like bear baiting don't understand bear baiting.
They have no idea
think
how
it's
much
like,
work goes into it.
Right.
Right.
Learning the animal, finding where they live, finding, how to attract them into a certain spot and how to get them to expose themselves. That is all things you have to think about heavily. It's not like throwing a corn pile in the field.
Right.
But
Not that there's anything bad with that, though.
not that there's anything bad with
Right.
that.
As long
people
as
do
it's
that
legal
as long as
in
it's
your
legal.
state.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And people I've noticed just tend to have just this desire to tear each other down.
Yeah.
And you see it in not only the hunting world, but in all kinds of worlds. You see the people within the same political party tearing each other down. You see people within the same sports industry tearing each other down.
Yeah.
You see, and so for hunters, especially like you say, with how much under attack we are from all sides,
Right.
we got to band together, man.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So
My personal standpoint is if it's legal and it's ethical to do, ethics being understanding the limitations of your abilities and your equipment,
yep.
Right.
then go for it.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to say bad about it. It might not be what I would choose to do necessarily,
Right.
but if it's legal and ethically done, then go for it. Knock yourself out and quit looking down on other people because of what kind of clothing they wear or what color camo pattern they like.
Well, it's kind of like, we had a bit of discussion before the show, before Mo pushed the button. And I'm not going to go into what the topic was of that.
It
on the
is a
air,
red
but
button.
It is a red button. But, and we kind of pointed out to ourselves, having different viewpoints on different things that we're able to actually sit here and talk about it. And we're, just chatting.
Yeah.
Mo might have a different view stance than I do, and I might have a view stance in Dalton than you do.
Yeah.
But there's no raised voices. There's
Right.
no,
Right.
animosity towards each other.
Right.
There's no anything like that because we're on the same team.
Right.
And understanding that
Because
opens the door
hunting is the
for-
common ground.
Right.
Yeah.
And understanding that, opens the door for discussion rather than argument. And that's
Right.
a huge difference.
Exactly.
Is being able to talk about, why'd you go with Stone Glacier rather than Kuyu?
Right.
Like what are the pros and cons? What kind of the price points and the materials they use, or why are you a long range shooter rather than a big bore, close range shooter, things like that. Why do you shoot trad bow rather than, it's all these different things. And you got to be able to stay on the same team and just work it out with each other.
Yeah. Kind of on that note, I get a lot of questions personally from people that know me, and they ask me about gear quite a bit because, I've tried to keep that relatively suppressed on the podcast because I don't want to come across as just caught up in too many little details that a lot of folks don't find important.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time and a place to talk about that, and we will, as the show goes on, go into the nitty-gritty details of why we choose some things versus others.
Oh, yeah.
And we've touched on a little bit of that. But that being said, people love to ask me, well, which brand hunting gear do you wear? And I tell them all the time, man, I've got some Sitka stuff, I've got some Kuyu stuff, and I've got some Stone Glacier stuff. And it all works great because I have used a whole set from every single one of those companies that I just named. And I have also offloaded and gifted a lot of gear to people that are just getting into hunting. Just because I didn't particularly care for that piece, but they could use it, but it didn't suit my need, my style, right?
Yep.
And then I'll go out and buy a contemporary piece of that same design from a different company, and it works better.
Yeah.
And I'm totally fine with mismatching things. And a great example of this is the camo versus solids game.
Mm-hmm.
Stone Glacier, I think, is single-handedly responsible for the reason that Kuyu and Sitka now make so much stuff in solid.
Yeah, I believe it.
And First Light has made a whole lot more in solids here recently, too.
First Light just released a new solids color that I really like.
Yeah, the pyrite color, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's Terra.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, pyrite is I think pyrite's a Sitka color.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, but that being said, competition is the motivator for innovation.
It is.
And I have nothing wrong with a company like Stone Glacier coming out in the last few years and making a huge entrance into the scene of apparel and saying, hey, we don't think you need camo to hunt with. If you play the wind right and you're a patient, good stalker, you can do it with solids just fine, with just earth tone solids and just breaking up your outline with different colors. And I've seen it work. I've done it. I killed my ram wearing a tan rain suit from Stone Glacier.
Mhm.
You know, it works just fine. You know, in photos, it looks like I'm wearing Carhartt. It's that color, you know.
Yeah.
But
It really does too.
But you don't need camo for a lot of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do I still own camo from Kuiu and Sitka? Absolutely, because there are some things that I personally think I would rather have camo for.
Mhm.
But that being said, that created a whole shift in the market for Kuiu and Sitka to kind of step up their solids production because they saw that the consumer was seeing that the Stone Glacier products were working.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And now I'm sure that there would be other reasons, and they would say, no, it wasn't just Stone Glacier. And I'm sure it wasn't just them. But the market has gone that way. And I'm saying that's a good thing because anytime a competitor comes out
Mhm.
with a product that makes the other company say, well, how can we make this better? How can we improve the cut on this style garment? How can we
Right.
make a better articulated hood? Should we put a longer front zip on the front of this hoodie to make it easier to take on and off?
Right.
Can we polygene treat this synthetic fabric so it doesn't stink? And it wicks better than merino, so now you have the best of both worlds, right?
Mhm.
And so the point being, I've got gear brands from all kinds of different companies. We're not officially title sponsored by any one of those companies. And if that day comes, there's going to be a caveat in there that we still have the ability to test some to test other brands. Sorry,
Right. Well,
because that's what drives brands to improve is seeing the weaknesses and improving upon it.
Yeah. And a lot of it, you know, really just comes down to ego.
Yeah.
You know, individual personalized ego, because you know, you get these guys that they think they're just so set in their ways.
Yeah.
My way is the best way regardless. And
Right.
like you pointed out, you know, all of these brands make multiple colors.
Yeah.
You know, they might make a version that's a solid and a camo.
Yeah.
They
absolutely
might make
they do.
5 different kinds of camo or
Right.
5 different colors of solid.
Yeah.
The reason they do that is to tailor it to your individual need.
Right.
You know, where are you hunting? When are you hunting? Is it
Yeah.
going to be more likely wet or more likely dry?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
do you need solid or do you need camo?
Right.
And so to come at each other from a perspective of, well, you got to do it my way because my way's the right way.
Right.
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 You know, and that's one thing I like about, not to brag on ourselves here on the show, but like, you know, we come at it from 3 different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we kind of show our way of doing things and hopefully people can pick up on that.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, the second you stop trying to learn,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you start going backwards.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not trying to pick up a new trick for next season, or you're not trying to talk to the guy sitting across the table from you.
Yeah.
You know, when I was at the rack banquet,
Mhm.
the fundraiser event.
Yeah.
You know, I was at a table of a whole assortment of mixed match kinds of people, different experience levels, different, you know, some were military, some
Which just
were,
to clarify is Resident Hunters of Alaska banquet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was their first annual fundraiser banquet that I went to. And, you know, we had 4 hours of conversation about different styles of things and different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And that's what you should be doing.
Right.
You know, we all need to just come
Right.
together and just, you know, be on the same team.
Yeah.
It's-
Find the common ground that you all have one interest in common, and that's the hunting industry. And put your personal biases aside about what color camo or what color not camo that you think you should wear, what brand is better. Wear whatever the heck you want. I don't really care.
Yeah.
If somebody goes out and is a sheep hunter and they wear mossy oak pattern clothes from the 1990s and they kill rams, more power to you.
Well, it's not hurting you at all.
Hey,
No,
you know what?
exactly.
What's the classic like
Why should I condescend on somebody because of their different choices?
original deer hunter camo? Like
Flannel.
Mossy oak.
But
no flannel.
it's this is what I have on the chair right here.
yeah, that
yeah,
red,
yeah.
That red
checkered,
and black.
Yeah.
The Fred
Yeah.
Bear camo. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Exactly.
But
So-
before
soaked-
that, it was buckskin. Which,
Soaked in motor oil.
yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I just kind of felt like I should touch on that just because of the news with Seek Outside and kind of the people that are coming at them from all kinds of different directions. I feel personally strong enough about what they said and how they approached it that I probably won't be giving them any business, and that's the freedom of the capitalist market.
Well, and it kind of falls back to, you know, what we talked about applies to not only the people that are tearing them apart on social media, but also to them.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's saying they can't hold the opinions that they do,
Right.
but to try and tear other people down or to, you know, infringe limitations on people just because of your own personal beliefs.
You can't.
Like, we have a great system that, you know, if enough people believe it, we can do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, just one-on-one, person to person, or business to person, or person to business.
Right.
Like, there's no reason for it. Hold to your beliefs, sure. Like, stand your ground, sure.
You can't,
but don't tear each other down.
You can't come out with extremist type of political views like that, one way or the other, for that matter.
Exactly.
And expect people to not get off your wagon about it. You're going to receive some feedback, and it's not all going to be positive.
Well, and if you're going to try to tear into other people, they're going to try to tear back into you.
Right.
So you can't be upset about it.
So basically, bottom line is see past the nonsense, come to find a common ground, quit looking down your nose at other brands, and some of those companies that I just mentioned, each one of them does things a certain way that I might not particularly care for.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're all supporting the hunting industry. They're all pro-gun. They're all pro-freedom. They're all pro-rights of Americans.
Yeah.
And as long as they stick that way,
right,
I'll buy from whichever one of those companies I darn well please.
The quality of a hunter isn't his camo.
Right.
And I think... I know you and I both know somebody who spends a lot of money on gear and camo.
Yeah.
And he's not a high quality hunter.
Terrible hunter. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Anyway.
And you can go the opposite direction too. You can get a guy that has a old woodstock rifle that's cracked in the back end and walking around in a flannel that's a phenomenal hunter.
Right. Yeah.
And it's...
Man, I just on that note, one of the best hunters I've ever known in my entire life hunts with a old Remington 270.
Yep.
And he's never shot anything with anything else. And he doesn't have all the expensive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The only high quality gear he owns is the stuff he's been given by his relative who's a guide and who just gives him stuff, just for, Christmas presents. But anyway, though.
Well, to wrap it up, basically, the gist of the fact is we're all on the same team.
Yep.
We're all sharing the same passion. If
we
you
all have
are
a common goal,
and I might, poke some people with this one, but if you're like a very proud trad bow hunter that looks down on the long range rifle hunter,
shame on you.
Not shame on you, but just take a second, find one, sit down with them, sit across the table from them, share, break bread, and just chat it up, because I guarantee you guys will have a lot more common ground and common passion.
Yeah. Put your pride aside.
Yeah. Get off the Facebook comment threads.
Yeah.
Get off the, the keyboard warrior types, just talk face to face. And I guarantee you'll find common ground.
Disagreements and problems are amplified on Facebook. Not solved.
Oh yeah.
Don't go on your little.
Didn't change anybody's mind.
Yeah. Don't go on your little rant and think you're going to change people's minds on Facebook. It's almost never going to happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about that. Let's move on. All right, folks. I want to take a second to tell you about a product I found this last year and have absolutely fallen in love with. It's the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. I used one on a recent black-tailed deer hunt in southeast Alaska, and it did a great job of keeping the saltwater and debris out of the action and also protecting the scope on my rifle from getting knocked around and damaged. On top of all that, the carry handle made it easy to transport the rifle to and from the boat during the hunt. When it got wet from rain and ocean spray, I hung it up at camp to dry at night, and it was always dry in 20 minutes or less. Stealthy Hunter also offers a wide variety of nutritional supplements for the outdoorsman, such as CBD oils, essential vitamins, turmeric, and bone broth. In the gear shop, they also have a lightweight first aid kit, glassing pads, and stuff sacks to organize your gear and your pack. Go check out Stealthy Hunter's website and use the code The Northern Hunter at checkout to get a discount on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
So we'll just dive right into our main topic here then. I know last time we went like an hour before we actually got into any listener questions, so we're going to try to get into that. We're at 23 minutes right now. We're doing good.
Yeah.
We might actually be able to get to all of these.
Nice.
So I'll just lead in with the first one. So Jake writes into the show. So Jake says, first off, love the podcast. You guys are doing great work and providing a ton of value and entertainment.
Thank you.
We really appreciate that, man. So on that note, I say that while writing to you from the high desert of central Nevada. On an upcoming trip to Kodiak Island with my wife on our honeymoon, Oh, in parentheses, she's awesome. It was her choice.
Nice.
Good on you.
Nice.
Good on you.
You picked a good one.
So they're heading to Kodiak for blacktail this coming November. I've listened to every episode and have learned a ton so far. It is much appreciated. However, the deer hunting we will be doing is with a transport, so there will be no guide on hand. I've never been to Alaska, and for that matter, I've never been around brown bears and grizzly bears. He goes into a concern about, what gun to bring in, whether he should have a backup gun or a sidearm. He says he currently has a 7mm Rem Mag, phenomenal gun, and that was what he intended to bring for deer. He says he does not, however, have anything to bring for bear defense in brown bear country. Goes in to ask for a couple of different ballistic reviews. What would your recommendation be for a green non-resident in this situation?
4570.
So when I was reading this earlier, I kind of, 4 things came to mind. Kind of, one is a recommendation that I'm going to just kick the whole thing off with. If you have never spent time around brown bears or grizzly bears, and you've never spent time in these woods, one, prepare yourself mentally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to sit in your living room and you're looking at these pictures and you're thinking about the situations you might be in. It's another thing when you're actually in there surrounded by the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Things start seeping into your mind, and you got to be mentally prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
To focus on the hunt and not on the fear.
Mm.
The second thing there is educate yourself on the bears.
Right.
Obviously as a non-resident, non-guided non-resident, he's not going to be hunting brown bears. So what he's specifically asking about is a defense situation.
Right.
So, there was a good quote. I don't know who said it, but it's, fear or knowledge is the enemy of fear.
Yeah.
The more you know, the less afraid you are.
Right.
And I'm going to do a little preemptive shout out / plug here. Mo wrote his first article.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting for him to, get his stuff together and get me a couple images, and we'll get that posted on the on our journal page at thenorthernhunter.com.
It should be up by the time they're listening to this.
Yeah. So go there and check that out. It'll be right on the front page as the featured article for the week, and you go into a really good perspective on that as somebody who grew up around these bears and everything, and kind of how your mindset plays in. I'm not going to go into detail because they'll have to go read the actual article.
You got to read the article. Yeah.
But your mindset going into this situation is everything. If you're expecting a bear behind every tree, you're not going to even enjoy your hunt. Yeah. You're going to be so freaked out that there's a bear behind every tree that you're not going to have fun. And you're on your honeymoon. So, your
new wife is going to be equally scared, if not more.
When you look up the actual behaviors of these bears and the mannerisms and the places you're likely to find them, look up negative bear encounters and see what kind of situations cause that. What kind of scenario did you sneak up on it while I was feeding in a salmon stream? Did you try to get too close for a picture? Just any kind of situation that you could then avoid being in. And understanding that negative bear encounters aren't all that common. It's really easy to get kind of obsessed about it, but honestly, you hear biologists all the time that, see thousands of bears a year and might see one negative encounter. Yeah. So preparing yourself mentally would be my first recommendation there. Yep. The fact asking about what gun to carry and things like that is great. That's good, but don't obsess over that. Right. Obsess over learning the animal and learning how realistic that situation is and how people handle it. Yep. My second thing is that I would say the 7mm Rem Mag is not a brown bear quality gun. Yeah. But it is a quality rifle for hunting in Alaska. I'll put it that way. I like the 7mm Rem Mag. I think it's a phenomenal gun. Me too. And if I remember right, that's the one you carried, Dalton, on our Southeast deer hunt this last year. Yeah. Correct? Yeah. It is. The only thing with a 7 Rem Mag is it will kill anything in this country. Yeah. Literally. I mean, you can use a 7mm Rem Mag to hunt any big game in America. Right. It's not necessarily the best stopping cartridge, though. Right. When you're looking at the cartridge realms for big bears, you kind of want to go medium bore or higher. Right. Medium bore starting at 338. Right. And so a 7 Rem Mag obviously doesn't fall into that caliber. Yeah. But how likely is that situation?
Yeah.
A big piece of advice that I've been told is carry the gun you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Rather than,
definitely.
trying to obsess over a gun that will do the job that you're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
A 7mm Rem mag that you are comfortable and confident with, that you can reactively shoot if you are in that situation, is much better than a 458 Win mag that you can't.
Yeah.
Maybe it's too heavy for you. Maybe you're not
Right.
familiar with it.
Right.
And so that's kind of the what I recommend there. If you're comfortable with it, and we'll go into what bullet you should put in your gun in a minute when we kind of get more to the table. But that would be my recommendation, is just be confident with what you've got. But if you're in the market for a new gun,
Mm-hmm.
we do have a couple recommendations.
Yeah.
I believe, Dalton, you wanted to chime in on that.
Well, yeah, I second what you're saying as your first point about mental preparation. As someone, I've been around a lot of bears. I've been around a lot of big bears, brown bears on the coast, grizzlies in the interior, black bears, you name it. And the best defense that you have is the defense that comes between your ears. And the
mental state,
the mental attitude that you have about bears, like James said, about not fearing them, is going to play a huge role. And okay, let's just use Navy SEALs, for example. Okay, Navy SEALs or any special forces group, they're not going into combat for the first time untrained, right?
Right.
They've been they've been in simulated live fire situations. They've had loud explosions go off all around them. They've been in simulated situations where if they screw up and their instructor hits them, they get read the riot act, and it's ingrained in their mind. In real life, you'd be dead right now, and they become familiarized with how to operate while under fire, and reacting under stress is a huge part of that ability. And when you listen to a lot of these special forces guys, like on podcasts and whatnot, and they talk about it, and a lot of the times the interviewers will say, were you ever afraid? And most of the time it's no, it was just another mission.
Right.
Right.
Because I've done this 100 times. If you listen to the guy that actually shot bin Laden,
O'Neill.
Yeah, Robert O'Neill. He talks about that in his interview with, I forget who was interviewing him, but he directly says, no, I had done that mission already in a simulated compound. We knew where he was going to be, and we knew how to get him. And it was just 1, 2, 3, open the door, bang, he's dead, and that job was done. And he didn't think twice about it because he had already gone through all these scenarios to prepare himself. Now, you're not going to get that luxury with brown bears because every instance that you encounter is going to be a little bit different than the last.
Right.
But a lot of it can be accomplished in your own head by just running through situations and preparing your motor skills with your gun that you're going to have.
Yeah.
Knowing when you should have a round in the chamber walking through the woods.
Yeah.
And I know I touched on this before, and I don't know if I would say defenselessly said it, but I don't want to hear any other arguments about it. People have their reasons why they don't carry around in the chamber, but there are 100% times that I walk into the woods and I chamber around long before I'm ready to shoot something, because I'm preparing myself for a worst case scenario.
Let me just something I like, the 3 rules of gun safety. Always keep your gun pointed in a safe direction.
Yeah. Always know what's behind your target.
Always know what's behind your target.
Know your target and what's beyond it.
Yeah.
Keep your finger off the trigger.
Yeah.
The 3 rules are: always keep your gun pointed in a safe direction. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot, and don't load your gun until you're ready to use it. But if I'm walking into the woods, I'm ready to use my gun.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you put a round in the chamber, and you're ready to use your gun.
Right.
So for hunting, I swap out that last one. And I mean, it would depend on which rifle you go with, but all of the rifles that I've traditionally hunted with, I keep a round in the chamber, and I swap that last one for thumb stays on safety.
Yeah.
Because I've had instances where I look down and for whether it rubbed on my pack, you know, if I shouldered it for a second or, you know, whatever happens, you know, I look down and my safety's off.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just part of being in the woods.
Right.
So obviously when it's on your pack, you can't do that. But when it comes back into your hand and you're walking through the woods, either at the low ready or whatever position you have your rifle at, you know, I always have my thumb resting on my safety.
Yeah.
And that's twofold. That's one, to make sure that it doesn't flip open. You know, it doesn't flip to fire and I'm at danger of a twig getting in there and setting off my trigger, you know, as I stumble through the brush. But the other thing is it's quick to flip that safety if I need to really quickly.
To bring the rifle into action.
Yeah. And I have to date never had a negligent discharge in the woods. Yeah. And so that method has served me well.
Right.
So,
but you know, just going back to that, you know, being proficient with whatever rifle you decide to carry, and I'll get to that in a second. But like I said, the mental aspect of it and running through scenarios, watch an absolute ton of bear encounter videos.
Yeah.
Go watch brown bear kill shot videos.
Oh yeah.
And see how they react when they're shot, and see how they react when they're being stalked. Just become familiar with their mannerisms to the best that you can.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, be as excessive as just go watch videos of bears just doing bear stuff, even if it's not hunting videos. Just familiarize yourself. There are plenty of videos of fishermen getting bluff charged by bears on rivers. Yeah. Those are great to watch because you can see, for instance, how close did that bear let him get to it? Yeah. Did she have cubs? Where did she send the cubs when the people came out? Did she send the cubs away? And, you know, how close, you know, establish a boundary in your mind. And this is a big one for me. There have been multiple times that I've been charged by bears and I've got a line drawn in the sand, proverbially speaking, where I've already got the gun up. I'm ready to pull the trigger, you know, safety's off. It's on the shoulder. I've got him in the crosshairs. And they're coming full speed. And I don't know yet if it's a bluff or not. Right. But if they cross this yard, if I'm in the wide open, that line might be, you know, 50 yards because I want to give them the ultimate distance. Maybe I'll let them get in a little bit closer if I'm out in the open. But if I'm in the brush and I've only got 60 yards of visibility, man, as soon as one steps out on a full charge, you've got very little reaction time to decide if he's going to divert or not. Right. Yeah. And so that line needs to be about, I mean, speaking in terms of percentages, if you can see 500 yards down the beach, letting him get 40 yards away is relatively short distance in terms of percentage of visibility. In the trees, if you can only see 60 yards, your line needs to be 40 or 50 yards in the trees, and that's 80% of your visibility. Yeah. You know, but that being said, if you don't have time to get a shot off and think about time to reload, if you do end up going with a 7mm, something that I consider when I don't have a bear stopping cartridge in my hands, that line gets drawn a little bit farther away. Absolutely. Because I need to be able to count on getting a second bullet into that bear if I have to shoot it the first time. Because once you put a bullet into it, you need to kill it. Yeah. And, you know, you are legally required to salvage the hide and the skull, all the feet. You know, everything has to come out that you'd normally take out. Yep. And you have to surrender it to Fish and Game and fill out a defensive life and property form to defend your reason for killing it illegally, essentially. And so anyway, establishing that line in the sand, if you will, where judging on your circumstances and your surroundings, if a bear comes out, how close am I going to let him get? Right. And run through that just while you're walking through the woods. Just run through scenarios and think, man, what if one stepped up over that high bank over there and now he's 20 yards away and he comes at me? Well, I'm going to shoot him right away. Yeah. Because I don't have any buffer zone of forgiveness whatsoever. Right. Because
and you can constantly adjust that as you're walking up a trail or something like that. That next tree. That tree is my border. You know, you get to that tree. Okay, now this next tree is, you know. Right.
But all of that being said, you need to be able to do that subconsciously. Yes. You can't make that your forefront of thought because you're going to miss opportunities at black-tailed deer doing that. Because you're going to be so lasered in and zoned in on watching and if you're not careful, that state of awareness, if you let it go that far,
Yep.
it'll become it will turn into a fear type situation.
And that's where I was saying, like,
And
then
you'll
you're just
just
not even having fun.
Right,
Like,
exactly. You'll just be obsessing about, well, I don't know if I want to go over there. It looks thick over there. There could be a bear sitting in there. Well, there also might be 100-inch black-tailed buck standing there too, you know? So obviously the mental side of it is a huge part of it. With that being said,
yeah.
you also need to have the confidence that when you shoot a bear,
Mhm.
in the event that things go south, you need to have the confidence that whatever gun you're shooting is going to do the job.
Right.
And there are plenty of stories out there about 7 mags killing big bears.
Yep.
But very few work well in a defensive situation.
Yeah.
Unless you hit it in the head or you hit it in the spine directly and knock it out immediately with one shot,
Mhm.
you're probably not going to stop that bear with one shot to the body.
I know a guy that dropped a charging grizzly two charging grizzlies, with a 270.
Wow.
Yeah. One shot apiece.
Wow.
Dirt nap.
Hmm.
That was some John Wayne stuff.
I would assume spine was hit.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that being said, can you 100% rely on that?
No.
The answer is no.
No.
Did it work for that guy? Sure.
Right.
But I've done this before, you know, years ago when I was about to buy a 7mm for a hunting rifle, I was doing all kinds of research,
Mhm.
and I looked up on a bunch of forums, and there was a particular story on a Fognak Island, which is in the Kodiak archipelago. And this guy was deer hunting, same type of situation. He bumped into a bear, it charged him, and he shot it, I think, 5 or 6 times before it finally died.
I think I actually
And
know what story you're talking about.
He shot it and it kept coming. You know, it would kind of hump up and it maybe stumble and fall a little bit. He'd rack the bolt, shoot it again, rack the bolt, shoot it again. And he said it would just kind of stumble every time, but it kept coming and it was still coming. And then he fired his 3 rounds and he had to reload his gun.
Yeah.
So now he's backing up, single feeding from his pocket or whatever,
Mhm.
and shooting this bear. And eventually I think it was the 5th or 6th round, and he finally killed the bear.
Yeah.
That's a real possibility if you have to stop a brown bear on the charge.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that leads into the next point. If it were me, I would consider going up in bore diameter for a hunting rifle in that situation.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned that I carried a 7 mag this last year when all of us went down to Southeast Alaska deer hunting. I only carry a rifle that small, if I can say it that way, in an area with bears that big when I have pretty good confidence that I'm not going to bump into one.
Gotcha.
That being said, we were in Southeast in December, you know, end of November, early December. We had feet of snow on the ground.
Yep.
And I saw 3 sets of bear tracks over the course of 15 days of hunting.
Yeah.
And all of them were leaving the area that we were going to be hunting. They were all pretty much leaving, with the exception of the one that we saw on that one river one day. All the other ones were on the way out of the area, probably going up to find a den, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it got cold.
Yeah, it got very, very cold. And I've hunted that area for, 7 years now consecutively. And I know that area really, really well. I've killed some brown bears in there before. 2 of them. Now, the first one that Mo was with me on my first trip in 2016, that was in October. But in November one year, I shot a brown bear in the middle of November. And that particular year was a warm November, and there were a lot more bears out that time of year. But usually, and every year since then, I've seen fewer and fewer bears the later and later I go.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I like going in December. And that there are a whole lot of other reasons why I think the deer hunting is a little bit better that time of year. We won't dive off into all that. But one of the big perks is I don't have to think about really a whole lot of bear encounters that time of year.
Yep.
Because most of them are gone. Now, this guy says that he's going. Did he mention what month of the year that he was going?
November. Yep.
There'll still be bears out on Kodiak.
Oh, yeah.
100%. And if you watch YouTube videos of deer hunting on Kodiak in October and November, almost invariably, everybody's seeing bear tracks, and most of them are getting footage of bears on hillsides.
You're seeing bears.
You're seeing them.
Your hunt and where you're going to go around the bears you
Right.
see to avoid them.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
and that's the thing with the knowledge, researching the bears, understanding the bears, is because if you don't,
Right.
and let's say you see one that's feeding on salmon 100 yards upstream from you.
Yeah.
If you're a paranoid individual, well, now you think that bear might be coming for you.
Right.
Oh, he saw me. Now he wants me.
Right.
Well, no, he's
Right.
happy eating salmon. He doesn't care about you.
And
But you have to understand the body language. One thing I really like in your article is you say, a bear that can be seen can be read.
yeah.
And reading bears is really,
Yep.
Mhm.
really important.
Don't
Yep.
give away too
Because-
much now.
No, that's
Yeah.
the half of
Yeah.
a sentence that I'm going to say.
But
And so you don't want to escalate a situation that doesn't
Right.
need to be, and you don't need to underestimate a situation that should be escalated.
Yeah.
But-
on that note, I would probably say 90% of bears are going to run away long before they're ever going to think about running at you.
Yeah.
So
Most of them.
Kodiak is different in that respect.
I don't completely agree with that. I know a whole lot of people that hunt Kodiak on a regular basis, and now in some areas the bear are more accustomed
I
to
think a
seeing
lot of it has to
people.
depend upon the area.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
get the impression they said because they said they're doing a transport.
yeah.
Think they'd be doing a fly-in.
Well, so it depends. So there's three
be-
versions.
I realize
both.
there's
So,
three
yeah.
versions.
And each one will have a certain amount of gear, which kind of leads into one of my other things I wanted to talk about. But
Real quick.
Yeah.
I understand there's three versions. To me, if I'm doing a transport in Kodiak, it's fly-in.
yeah, yep.
Right.
Boat base is very popular too, and he could be doing that.
That
Yeah,
could be.
that's-
where he's coming back out to a big boat every night.
Yeah.
But I've known guys that have hunted Kodiak and personally talked to them about some of the experiences they've had.
Yeah.
Some of the surrounding islands like a Fognac and
Yeah.
Montague and Raspberry.
Well, Montague's up in Prince William Sound, but
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I had that one all mixed up. But Raspberry Island.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one I think. Sometimes I get it mixed up, even a local.
Yeah.
It's not like we're 600 miles away or anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I was going to say was people a lot of times don't have issues with bears until they've killed something.
Yeah.
Especially,
I was going to get to that for sure.
where you either when you shoot the deer,
Yeah.
Mhm.
the gunshot can be, depending on the area and depending on the mood of the bears, it can be a dinner bell.
Yeah.
So while your 7mm might do great,
Mhm.
it went until all of a sudden you turn around when you're cutting up your deer
Yeah.
And there's a bear
and
standing
there's a
there
bear standing there.
staring at you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
at that point, he's there to eat.
Right.
You're not scaring
Right.
him away. He wants
Right.
that food.
Right.
Yeah.
And what would your opinion be of a 7mm as a rifle and having a heavy 44 mag or 460
That's right.
or 454?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Yes.
And a lot of people
And he did specifically ask about
a
that.
lot of people trust a sidearm with their life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That I've carried a 44 a whole lot. I used to carry a 454 Casull. It got to the point where it was so
It's a
heavy,
boat anchor.
I just hated carrying it, and I found myself just stuffing it in my pack or leaving it in camp every day
Yeah.
instead of
I remember
carrying
what
it.
I remember.
And I switched to a 44 Magnum, and then this last year I actually started carrying a Springfield XDM Elite 10mm.
Mm-hmm.
And I obviously your handgun is not your primary weapon of defense.
Mhm.
You should always attempt to have a rifle in your hands if possible, because a 7mm is leaps and bounds better
Yeah.
for stopping a bear than a 44 Magnum or a 10mm or even a 454 Casull.
That being said, though, it's a slower shot pace. So working that bolt action is going to be a lot slower.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's not that you shouldn't carry a 44 or a 10 mil
Right.
or a 454
But
Casull or a 500 Smith & Wesson.
that should be
Oh my
reserved
goodness,
for
yeah.
when you can't get to your rifle.
Exactly.
Right.
That's for when that first shot either missed or didn't stop it,
Right.
and you rack the bolt back, and before you can push that thing forward again, he's on you.
Yeah.
10 feet or less.
Yeah.
That's when your pistol
I think
comes into.
the ideal situation I see is I like to carry a handgun
Mhm.
for the principal fact that when my rifle's leaning against a tree
Yeah.
or against the
You
other
have
end of the animal,
something,
you
right.
know, depending on the situation
Yeah.
I'm in,
Because you might not have time to even reach and grab your rifle.
I've been cutting up bears, right, and have bears come in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
To a bait, that's 15 yards away while I'm cutting up a bear, or just curious and wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
So you want that sidearm there because you can grab it right away.
Right. But that's your last line of defense.
Right. So in the rifle situation, you've got a 7mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're going on your honeymoon. You've got some money to spend for your honeymoon, I would think. If you can afford it, buy a 375.
Yeah.
Or if it is a primary bear defense gun, something like a 4570 that's perhaps maybe a little bit lighter of a gun.
Yeah.
That is for bear defense. You carry the 4570. Your wife carries a 7mm.
So let's go over one thing before we dive off into that.
Okay.
Because I do want to dive into that. So his first question was if it's enough. I would say, in respect to the fact that you're not hunting these bears.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be pursuing the bear if you see one, right?
Yeah.
I upped the rifle I was planning to take to Southeast because if we saw a bear, I was going to pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you're not pursuing it, I would say stick with the gun you're comfortable with. If you don't have a fund for a new gun,
right? Yeah.
If you are kind of stuck with what you've got, 7mm is okay. But if you do have a budget for a new gun and you plan on just bringing one gun for this hunt, what would you recommend, Dalton?
Yeah. So I have 4 things.
Okay. Because keep in mind, he's specifically hunting deer.
Right.
So you don't want to go too crazy.
Right.
But
4 points here.
Yeah.
Number 1, be situationally aware, like we said, in the woods, but also when you kill a deer.
Mm-hmm.
Relocate it to a spot with visibility if possible.
Absolutely.
That's number 1.
Absolutely.
Never put yourself in a vulnerable situation where your head is down, you're bent over dealing with a deer, or you're on your knees taking it apart and you're busy with your knife and you allow something to sneak up on you.
Yep.
Making noise. When you have a deer down, now you're a point of interest. Whereas if you're just walking through the woods being aware of your surroundings, you can be quiet and not be too worried about it. Obviously, you're deer hunting, right? But when you kill a deer, your mindset needs to change to go on the defense. Number 2 is if you do decide to run with your 7 mag, you need to pick a bullet that is going to perform well enough in that caliber to get above average penetration. Okay. Now that we have gone over monometal style bullets, he mentioned, should I just use a 160 grain TSX from Barnes?
Right.
I've shot blacktail deer with Barnes bullets and other monometal style bullets out of my 7 mag, and it works great, but it kills them differently than it does with a quicker expanding lead type of bullet. For this conversation, he's talking about bears in particular. Any bullet you throw out of a 7mm Rem mag is going to kill a deer dead as a doornail.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to worry about it being tough unless you're shooting ultra long range, which you're not going to.
No. On Kodiak, you probably could, but
you could stretch out a few hundred yards.
Yeah.
But any reasonable quality bullet is going to work for deer. That being said, I would stick with a monometal just for the sake of having an ultra tough bullet. In the event that you have to shoot a bear front on, you want to bury that bullet as deeply as you can lengthwise into that bear. Now, if you have the funding to be able to buy another rifle, you also need to have one more question. And I forgot to mention this. This is my 3rd point, and then we'll get to the rifle.
Okay.
If your wife is hunting with you, okay, and you decide to buy another rifle, you can always have her carry the 7 mag.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, we were just going to get into that after this part.
And then you carry the big bear gun.
Right.
And if you see a deer, then you can just switch guns or let her shoot it first, right?
Well, and that's...
And that way you have control of the situation with your larger caliber defense type of rifle. Now, I won't jump too far ahead because I didn't realize you guys were going to say that. But if you're going to pick a rifle specifically with bears in mind, there are a whole lot of guys up here in Alaska that I know, and I've done it too, that shoot a 375 for deer hunting for that exact reason. because they're hunting in heavy bear density areas where the possibility of running into a bear is pretty good. And the chance that one is going to take interest in a gut pile when you shoot one is even higher.
Right.
So if you decide that you have money for a bear rifle or a more capable stopping rifle, I would start at a 338 Win Mag. Something like the Ruger Alaskan with a 20-inch barrel. Comes with a muzzle brake. It's nice and short and handy. It's not light, but you don't want a light, heavy caliber gun anyway.
Which I don't know.
It's weatherproof.
Where did he say he's from? Nevada?
Yeah, Central Nevada.
Central Nevada. I don't know what the brush situation there is. But, when you think of the difference between a 20-inch barrel and a 24 or a 26-inch barrel, it doesn't sound like a whole lot when you're sitting here in a room.
But it's significant.
But when you're fighting your way through the brush, you can tell the difference.
It is huge.
Yeah.
So something like a 338 Win Mag Ruger Alaskan would be a really good factory option. Those come in around $1,200 to $1,400. You can find them on Gunbroker all day long. I was just looking on Gunbroker before we started recording, and there are a couple of those on there right now. Those are a great option. They don't break the bank. They shoot good. You can choose to not even put a scope on it if you just want to use it for a defensive rifle. Load up good quality ammunition.
I do have one qualm with that rifle for that reason.
You don't like the sights.
You can't adjust elevation.
Yeah.
It is a set elevation. You can adjust your left or right, but your elevation is set, and I don't like that.
Well, in the event...
At close range, it's not going to matter. But
in the event that you use this rifle as a stopping gun, it's not going to matter.
Right.
Now, that being said, I would recommend a nice low power scope, like a Leupold VX3 HD 1.5 to 5 would be a great piece of glass, and that's $500. So there you have entry level of $1,800 or less for a perfectly capable bear rifle. And now your bases are covered. Now let's talk about my favorite option would be a 375 caliber. Because a 338 will stop a brown bear, but a 375 will do it much, much better.
Yes, it will.
Now, you can keep going up all the way you want, up to a 700 nitro. I personally think that the 375 is kind of the sweet spot for bear hunting. That's just my personal preference.
700 nitro is like $150 a round these days?
I think more than that.
Yeah.
I think it's over $200 a round. But staying within the bounds of realism.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's insane.
Man.
I'm sorry.
Not know that.
Did I say $200 a round?
You did.
No, I meant box.
Oh, buddy.
I've heard it's about it's over $100 a round.
What?
No way.
Whoa.
Anyway, continue your talk. We'll look into this.
Anyway, we can revisit this for fun. So a 375. Now, the common misconception is that when you shoot a deer with a 375, well, you're just going to cut that poor thing in half. That's not true.
I love telling people about that.
Because you have a larger bullet, a much tougher constructed bullet, like a Barnes or a Nosler partition or a Swift A-frame. It's going slower than 3,000 feet a second by a large margin. You're with a 375, you're going to be going anywhere from with an H&H, you'd be going let's say 2,500 feet per second with a 300 grain bullet. Okay. With a Ruger, you might be getting 2,600 and change.
I know the 270 grain interlocks are going 2,800 feet per second.
That's right.
So that's
right.
Once you start dropping down, the 300 grainers, I believe, are 26, 27, somewhere in there.
But so a big bullet going slower, that big tough bullet is not designed to expand rapidly whatsoever. That's designed for high resistance expansion. Okay. So it takes a lot to get those bullets to open up, realistically speaking. It takes a lot of resistance, and a black-tailed deer weighing at 120 pounds, if you shoot it in the ribs and don't hit any major shoulder or hip bone, it's not even going to reach full expansion when it exits that animal because it's not enough resistance. And I've seen that happen.
And it's not even just that. I mean, and that is true. That is absolutely true. But the misconception with surrounding bloodshot, as far as bloodshot meat goes, is that the bigger the bullet, and I've heard people when I was hunting with a 45-70, shooting deer, and it's like, well, man, you're going to cut that thing in half, or you're going to bloodshot it from nose to tail. And
it's velocity.
It's exactly the opposite,
right?
Because what causes the bloodshot is the ripple effect of the velocity.
Right.
And so when you're flinging these cannonballs, basically,
yeah,
a bigger bullet, a heavier bullet at slower speed.
Yeah.
You know, one good example is my deer this last year.
Yeah.
You know, I shot that thing at 410 yards or something like 420. Yeah. And, you know, I was shooting my 300 Win Mag with a 200 grain nozzle partition put into it. And I carried that because just in case the opportunity for a bear came up, I was going to have it.
Yep.
Now that deer was quartering away from me at the time that I shot it. And whoa.
Sorry.
Sorry to mess up just
$150 per shot for a 700 nitro.
Wow.
It says in all capital bold letters, not a box.
Wow. Okay.
That's amazing. But anyway,
so back to your deer.
So it was not a hard quartering, but it was a quartering away shot.
Yep.
And I entered in right in the boiler room, right where I wanted to. But on the offside, I actually did end up going through the shoulder blade.
Yep.
And when I dressed out that deer, it did almost no meat damage.
But talk about the impact velocity.
But the impact velocity for a 200 grain bullet at 400 something yards was like 2,200 feet per second.
Right.
You know, the bullet expanded. It did what it was supposed to do. That was well within the range of expansion for that particular construction.
But you could eat the meat right up to the bullet hole.
Right. There was like from the center of the bullet hole, there was like 1 inch all the way around it. So a half inch on each side was a little bit of jelly.
Which is negligible.
And I broke bone on that one.
Yeah.
So a big bullet going slow is not something to worry about.
Does far less meat damage than a lighter bullet going way faster. And coming from someone, I've shot a pile of black-tailed deer with all kinds of different calibers. And by far, the most meat damage I have ever seen was with lighter, faster bullets.
Yeah.
By a long shot. All the bigger calibers do a whole lot less meat damage.
Yep.
Some of the littlest amount of meat damage I've ever seen was with a 338 Ultra Mag shooting black-tailed deer. And I could not believe it.
Yeah.
And that's even going a little bit fast for my liking.
Oh, yeah.
But I think he was shooting 275 grain bullets. So they
on
weren't
on the higher end.
Yeah, they weren't quite going, typical Ultra Mag velocity.
Right.
They were hand loads, and they were much heavier than normal bullets for that round.
Yep.
But with that said, the 375 with a 300 grain bullet is a great stopping round.
Yeah.
Now, here's my argument against using a handgun in preference to a rifle. You guys both mentioned that in the event that a bear pops out up close, you want the ability to shoot it more than once.
Yeah.
So you might only get the chance to shoot your rifle one time, and then while you're running the bolt, if you don't put the bear down, it might keep on coming. Right?
Yeah.
And then you don't have time to rack it and shoot it again. I've shot some bears coming at me, and with a 375, I don't need to shoot them more than once. They sack.
Yeah.
They're dead before their chin hits the ground.
Yeah.
And I shoot all the way through them.
I remember specifically, this is one story that actually made me, or influenced me to buy a 375 Ruger's. You were telling me about this bear you guys had that you had hunted for a client, and that he had made a shot on it. It ran off into a swamp. You guys tracked it down and it was still alive.
Yeah.
You said you shot it and it dumped.
Yeah.
And it got back up. And then you shot it and it dumped.
Yeah.
And then it got back up.
Yeah.
But every time you shot it,
it straight
dumped.
Down. Yeah.
It was knocked down.
Yeah.
It realized it got hit. And that to me, for an animal that big and that tough, was all I needed to hear. I was like, okay, it can do that. All right, I'm good.
So just to get the facts straight, it didn't ever make it all the way back up.
Okay, yeah.
That particular one,
its head,
that particular one actually went into a river.
And
I had run up there and it was standing there, and I shot it through the shoulders because that's all I had a shot at, and straight down.
Mm-hmm.
And then he propped himself back up. But that was a side shot.
Yeah.
The frontal shots carry more all the way through it.
Mm-hmm.
It absorbs every little bit of that 4,000 plus foot-pounds of energy coming out of that rifle.
Yeah.
And it carries all of that all the way through the body. I've never had one stand up or even twitch after being shot frontal.
Yeah.
Frontal shots on bears are absolutely my favorite with a rifle because they just don't move.
Yeah.
It works. But point being, with a 375 with a 300 grain bullet, now obviously your effective distance for deer is going to be shortened quite a bit.
I was going to say, I actually just wanted to go into that.
Yeah.
Because 375 is coming up in the world, man.
Yeah.
You kind of see like the companies putting their heads together and producing bullets. We've got every bullet under the sun for the 308 caliber.
Yeah.
338 caliber, 6.5 caliber.
Right.
You can find any bullet you want in those.
Yeah.
375's not there,
right,
but it's moving that direction. They're making more options and more options that you're not going to be shooting 600-700 yards with it, but if you're competent to shoot out to 4 on a
absolutely.
deer, it'd work all day long.
And that I would say that you could do that with a lighter bullet, like a 250.
Right. Yes, yeah.
But in this particular situation, since we are focused on the defense situation, I'm just going to say, if you do buy a bigger rifle, I would still bring the 7 mag and do what we said earlier. Have your wife carry the 7 mag. And that way, if you're on an open hillside and a buck walks out, you can just shoot it with the 7 mag.
Yeah.
And that way it's just no big deal. But you've always got the 375 in the event that things go south. But
right.
Not having to then worry about going out and buying a handgun if you don't already have one. I would rather see someone go out and buy a 375 and learn to shoot it well.
Yeah.
And the recoil isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Don't believe what you hear from your buddies that think it's just terrible. It's just a big push. A 7 mag is a sharp recoil from a bottlenecked down cartridge.
Yep.
A 375 is just a big push. And I would rather see someone buy a 375 and learn to shoot it well and bring that and even use it on deer if need be. And the reasons that we just explained, it's not going to blow them up. It's not going to be a problem. Just don't hit any major bone.
Yeah.
And I would rather see them do that because I have more confidence in one good placed round from a 375 absolutely sacking a big brown bear than I do of a handgun being able to dump a bunch of rounds into it from close in the event that you don't have your rifle handy.
Yeah. And I think my recommendation would be right along the same lines as that. We're pretty like-minded in that aspect. One thing I wanted to kind of break down for people is that a lot of people misunderstand the bore system when it comes to rifles.
Yeah.
And, not to pick on anybody, but if you shoot a 375, you're not in the big bore club. And you see a lot of people doing that. They're posting pictures of their 378 Weatherby or their 375 Ruger. Oh, joining the big bore guys. Yeah. Big bore starts at 4. 0.4. That's when you get into big bore. Yeah. A lot of people don't understand that there's 4 different bore sizes or bore categories, I should say. There is big or large bore, big bore, which is 0.4 and up. You have your medium bore, which is 0.33 to 0.4 or 0.399, I guess would technically be it. Yeah. Small bore is anything bigger than a 22 and smaller than a 33 or 0.33.
Wow. And
then miniature bore is anything 22 caliber and below. So my recommendation, I do love the 375. I think that's a fantastic recommendation, but I would just suggest anything you can find comfort with shooting and be comfortable with shooting in that at least the medium bore range. Right. A 338 Win Mag, a 338 Rum, 340 Weatherby, a 375 Ruger, things like that. Those are all medium bore cartridges. Yeah. And you'll find phenomenal performance from those because you're going to get kind of that mix of the big bore power with the smaller bore, kind of the longer range effect. Like we said, you could snipe a deer at 400 yards with it. Yeah. If you're shooting the right bullet and you're competent.
Keep in mind, like the 340 Weatherby and the 338 Ultra Mag have substantially more recoil.
Oh yeah,
than a 375 H&H or Ruger does.
Yeah,
and for ammo availability, the 375s. H&H and Ruger and the 338 Win Mag are going to be your best options for versatility of factory ammo offerings. Yeah. It's going to be the cheapest to shoot and it's going to be the easiest to shoot as far as recoil goes.
Yeah.
Those would be of those 3 you can't go wrong.
So if you were to run a 1-gun arsenal, what would your recommendation be, Mike?
If I were to run a 1-gun arsenal,
for this hunt.
I would probably shoot with a 338 size because I would have more stopping power than a 7mm or a 30 caliber.
Yeah.
But I would have more
reach,
easier attainable range or
Yeah.
reach
than a 375.
than a 375. And
Yeah.
I would put,
Absolutely.
like a 3 to 10 or something on that I could still have a low enough power for quicker
Right.
acquisition.
Loopold has a scope in 2.5 to 8 in the VX3 line. That's a really good option.
It is.
If you step up to the VX5, you can get a 2 to 10. That's also a really good option too. If you don't want like a 1 to 5 or a 1.5 to 5.
Right. I mention it and I just because I like it. I love my 4570.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to say it's better than 375, but
Because it's not.
but the 375 is not better than the 4570 either. And
They're both good at very individual things.
We
don't have to row that boat again.
Right. No. For close range, for defense, the 4570 is great. You can buy them in a short barrel.
Mhm.
That being said, I wanted to clarify: don't buy a Henry. That's my opinion of the matter. I do not like the Henry lever guns, especially at least the ones made in the last 20, 30 years. I've seen a lot of issues with them. I've seen a lot of guys having them blow up on them.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what my dad shoots. That's why I was asking.
And
Because he
another
loves
thing
his.
is with a 4570, with in Marlin had some issues for a while too.
Yeah.
And they've been bought by Ruger
Well,
now
that's
because
just-
they're making better guns. But
That's a whole rabbit hole. we can go down.
I'm not going down there. But I have just a plain old Marlin. Well, not plain old, but I have a Marlin 4570
Mhm.
that was.
Is it a pre-Remington?
No, it's not.
Oh, really?
But it's got zero issues. It's an awesome gun. I've had no problems with it whatsoever. But it's got the side load. Now the new Henrys have a side load.
Yeah,
I hope they've got some of the other issues fixed.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. That side load, to me, it's much easier to
I
load.
agree.
You don't have to pull the tube out. You don't
Yeah.
have the whole thing. That's my thoughts on it. On the 4570 is just do research into a gun. Don't walk into Sportsman's and say I want a 375 and buy the first one they hand you, unless it's what you want and you know
And
it.
now, if you're beach hunting, let's say they are on a boat transport,
Right.
you might have a chance of some longer range shots. But we found, when you're on the trails and stuff like that, the ability to take 100+ yard shots really not there.
Yeah.
So something like a
Kodiak's going to be
4570.
a lot different.
Kodiak has a lot of exposed hillsides where you can get well above brush line.
It just depends on where you're hunting. Yeah.
Exactly.
If you're in the thick,
Yeah.
you're not going to be shooting
Right.
past 100 yards in most cases.
Yeah.
But so the other thing is kind of like what you guys have talked about is running a 2-gun arsenal.
Right.
Now, as a one-person hunter, never do that. This is not a video game, people. You can't just push a button and switch real quick.
Yeah.
And so, highly unrecommended. But, we've all hunted with our wives before or brought them into bear baits and things like that. And that's, one thing one of many things I love about my wife is that, she does go out and she'll go to the bear bait with me. And typically we do exactly what you guys said, you know, and if we're going in somewhere, typically I'll have whatever we're hunting with, and she'll have, let's say, either a larger bore caliber rifle or a shotgun, because if you're not hunting them and they're within close range, a shotgun with a very well built slug, like a Brennecke Black Magic, something of that ability, that penetration is going to be great. I mean, you're smacking that thing with, a bullet that's over a 1/2 inch wide. Yeah. And those things, the Brenneckes.
And that's not a bad option either.
The Brenneckes penetrate like crazy.
That's probably the most economical option for a 2-gun arsenal.
You can pick up a shotgun for, a good pump action. If you really want like just a regular one, $500.
I think
maybe even cheaper than that. I don't know.
Now, cheaper than that.
I haven't bought it.
Think about saltwater resistance though.
Mine did fine when we were down there duck hunting.
Taking apart, I had a blued gun for when we were duck hunting too.
Yeah.
Taking it apart and oiling it every day, it did all right.
And it's super easy with those things.
I'm not going to say they did fine. I'm going to say they did all right because they won't be the same again.
Yeah.
That's true. But at the same time, taking a shotgun apart is very easy.
True.
So it's something you can do very, very easily
but,
at the end of the day.
But then again, if you go buy a 3...
And I'm not saying that's the only route to go, but I'm saying that is a route.
It's an option.
Or like you guys said, a 375 or, anything like that.
Yeah.
4570, one person can have a lever gun.
If you go buy a $300 or $400 shotgun, it may not bother you too much. You need to clean it every day, but it may not bother you too much that it has a couple spots that it's not going to be the same again. Because it's not, it's not a super expensive piece of equipment. As long as it's functional, that's what matters.
And they have ones these days that aren't super expensive, but come from the factory Cerakoted too.
Yeah.
So then you don't really have to worry about it that much.
Right.
And, just clean out inside the action and inside the tube and all of that.
Right.
But, the thing with like what me and my wife do is we'll run, alternating shooter. We'll run, okay, I'm taking the next one, so I'll carry the gun. Or she's taking the next one, and then I'll carry the shotgun.
Yeah.
A system like that works perfect. A system like that, you can have your defense gun, have your long range shooter, because with a 7 mag, heck, you could be good on deer out to well beyond, the ranges most people are capable of.
Yeah.
And
certainly past the normal ranges that you'll see on Kodiak.
Right. Yeah. And so if you wanted to be able to shoot long range, regardless of where you see it.
Yeah.
And have that close range availability.
Yeah.
I think 2-gun arsenal is a great way to go.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, if you're a single hunter, don't do it, man.
Yeah. I think that pretty well covers what he was asking about.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think we hit a lot of different options and we gave you a lot of options to choose from.
Educate yourself.
Yep.
Make sure you know what you're shooting. Do you have a specific, I guess you kind of touched on the TTSX, but any bullet recommendations? Other than that,
for the defense rifle?
Well, he just says in general, because he's saying right here for the 7 mag.
Yeah, for the 7 mag, if you could get 175 grain trophy bonded bear claws, that'd be a really good, nice, tough, heavy bullet that has higher sectional density than a 160 grain does. Yeah. If you can get that one to shoot in a factory load, you can find those loaded by Federal. That'd be an awesome option if they shoot well. And that'll get you out to 200 or 300 yards, no problem, for deer hunting. And it'll do a lot better because of the higher sectional density in the event that you have to use it on a brown bear.
Yeah.
For a 375, pick your poison. 300 grain Hornady DGX would be a good one. 300 grain Barnes TSX, 270 grain Barnes TSX. 300 grain Swift A-frame. It's hard to go wrong with any good 300 grain partition would be a good one too. Like I said, it's hard to go wrong with any premium quality controlled expansion bullet in that caliber because, like I said, they're inherently more tough because of the game that they're designed to shoot.
Well, and you're just naturally poking a bigger hole too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So who wants to tackle this next one?
Let's see here. We've got a question from Bradley. He says, "Good afternoon. I just recently found your podcast and love hearing from y'all's point of view on hunting Alaska and the additional information. I'm in my mid-30s and starting to feel a tad bit of a midlife crisis in my hunting career. I stay in quite good shape and prepare for a hunt year-round. I'm currently wanting to plan a rifle hunt in 2024 or 2025 for moose or caribou. I have currently seen Lamper's and Gritty's film series of doing both on a float trip. Is hunting both species a realistic hunt for an average hunter on a float trip like that, or a DIY driving roads and hiking into areas? Mainly curious on what parts of Alaska this could be possible, or should I concentrate on one species per trip and hunt 2 separate areas during our voyage to Alaska from Texas? I have 2 to 4 weeks of vacation time to spend, so time shouldn't be an issue. Not looking for an entire podcast on this topic, but would love for any help or information y'all are willing to lend me." Well, thanks for writing in, Bradley. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And that's a great question. He mentioned that he's watched Brian and Ryan's YouTube series on DIY Alaska moose and caribou hunt that they did this last calendar year. They did a great job of filming that hunt. They did a float hunt, like he mentioned. They did a good job of documenting that and showing how to do that style of hunt. That's probably one of the best float hunt videos that I've seen that showcases that style and really explains how they hunt. That's a really good option. I know he mentioned he has 2 to 4 weeks. Man, if you've got 4 weeks to come up and hunt, and he mentioned that, is it possible to do both species? The answer is yes.
Absolutely.
That there are areas. I don't want to get too specific, but I'll tell you what, Bradley, if you're listening to this and you want a little bit more specific information about who to call to see about a transport flight or an area to look at, if you look me up on Instagram at The Endless Hunter, or if you just write us in on our company website, on our email, one of those two ways, I'll get back to you personally about that. I'll private message you, and we can talk a little bit more in depth about where you might try to look at to go for that. But there are areas, we'll just say up north.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a good number of transporters that operate in that area with fly-in opportunities on float planes and wheel planes. And you do have a fair bit of opportunity there for moose and or caribou. Just depending on where the caribou are migrating that particular year, he's looking at 2024 or 2025. And that's perfect because most of these transporters are booked out well in advance.
Oh, yeah.
And the smaller the transport operation, the fewer pilots and staffing they have, and the fewer planes they have, the farther out they're booked, especially all the really good ones.
Yeah.
And like I said, I do have a number of people that I could direct you to call if you'd like to go that route. I just would prefer not to go talking about it on the air for the time being, just because of how backed up they are. Now.
Right.
But and then he mentioned a road hunt. For a fly-in hunt, I would probably say at least 10 days if you're going to do something like that. 10 to 14 days will give you a good idea to learn a new area, kind of figure out where the moose are. And caribou is a whole lot less strategic than people like to make it out to be.
They're very random.
If
critters.
they're there, they're there. And if they aren't, then they aren't.
Yep.
And when you find them, you better go get one because they might not be there in the next 3 hours.
And if they're running one direction,
don't chase them.
Don't chase them because they might just turn around and run the other direction.
Yeah. Don't. Yeah. You're never going to catch anything in Alaska if it's walking away from you. It's always harder terrain than you think it is. So 10 to 14 days if you do a fly-in hunt. If you have 4 weeks to do 2 separate blocks of hunts, that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just thinking about if I was a non-resident and I had this option,
right?
I would drive up. He said he's driving up from Texas. I would drive up and book a fly-in charter hunt for the first 2 weeks. Go get flown out somewhere. And then if you don't get caribou or moose for that matter, then have a backup area planned that you can go drive to and hike into an area for caribou, or go to a raft rental place and find a river that crosses the road at one spot.
Say, you can do some good flow
and
hunts.
Then intersects the road again, maybe 50 miles down or something.
Right. Yep.
Figure out a way to get back up to your truck. Anyway, there are all kinds of different ways that you can do that. But that would be a good way where if you strike out on the first round, you got another chance.
Well, and floating would be arguably a more economic way to go.
Yeah.
Than say a fly-in hunt would be.
Yeah.
And so it kind of depending on the economic.
Right. Right. And, he's obviously unguided. He doesn't specify that he's going on a guided hunt. So you're going to be doing all the stuff yourself. You're going to be figuring out everything for yourself, and it's going to be a huge learning curve, and it might prove well to your advantage to have 4 weeks. If you do indeed have that kind of time.
The other thing I would point out is that he doesn't specify if he's coming up by himself or with a buddy or anything like that. And I will just say, is hunting both possible?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is the possibility of getting neither present? Absolutely.
Yeah, very much
But if you're coming up here by yourself, just make sure you're in shape, because you might think twice about getting both species there.
Nothing can prepare you for the shock that you're going to experience when you come up on a dead moose that you just shot.
Yeah. When you realize just how massive those animals are.
Yeah.
And there's some where you can't even, it's hard to lift just 1/4 by yourself as a fairly large guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a chore and a half for sure. It's hard work.
So physically speaking, make sure you're up for the task of chasing both.
Yeah.
And make sure that you're prepared for that, because it's real easy to get hurt trying to do some heavy deadlifting out there in the woods. Yeah. And try to pack these things, especially
and the last
how far from the river or from the campsite you ended up being when you shot it.
Right. From the runway. That brings up another good option. You could also just get flown into a spot and stay stationary somewhere and not float anywhere. you could get dropped off on like a hilltop somewhere and just try to call moose out to your area that you're comfortable shooting them in, and that you can effectively have the confidence that you can get them back to the airstrip after you shoot it.
Yeah.
That's a big concern. And I think that's probably a little bit safer option than floating for your first trip up here, because floating is not for inexperienced people. If you don't have any experience in a water, in this type of water up here. Now, a lot of Alaskan rivers are pretty calm, but there are some that you can get yourself in a real nasty situation really, really fast.
Do the research on the river.
More people die in Alaska in the water, whether it's rivers or oceans, than they do from any other type of outdoor activities every year.
Absolutely.
By a long shot. Water kills, and it's cold. And if you hit a log jam or a sweeper and you get overturned or stuck under your raft, man, you have got minutes to get out of that water and start warming up, or you're going to die of hypothermia even if you don't drown.
Yep.
So I guess my advice would be just do a lot of homework. Just try to figure out what kind of terrain you're looking in. If you're looking for open hilltop type of country, you're going to try to avoid some certain parts of the state. If you do have boat access opportunities, if you're comfortable in rafting, pack rafts might be a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian and Ryan in their YouTube series utilized a couple of pack rafts. That's a really good option. To be able to hike up into an area and then float a creek back down to the road if you're hunting off of a road system somewhere.
Yep. And there's plenty of opportunity for both. I mean, even if you don't want to float or fly.
Yeah.
You can,
Absolutely.
if you're driving up and you're able to, bring a wheeler or something like that.
Yeah.
There's endless miles of trails up here.
And there's a whole lot of country right off of a road that you can just, hike a few miles off.
Yeah.
And, I mean, let's just go ahead and say it. Just if you wanted the ultimate opportunity for a drive style hunt, that time of year would be the 40-mile hunt.
Yeah.
As far as both opportunities, if you were to drive up, now the Steese gets a lot of traffic.
It does.
But I'm assuming he's talking about September. So then if Moose is open, now the other downside is if you were to go into the eastern side over off the Taylor Highway in that unit, you cannot possess a moose tag and a caribou tag at the same time in that unit. Unless they specify that it's good for that particular year. And they've not said that yet. Well, and they won't until a little bit later, I don't think.
And they've started implementing stuff like that off the Steese as well, where they shut down caribou during moose season.
Exactly.
And then reopen it afterwards.
Exactly.
So the ability to take both, unless you're able to catch, 1 week on both ends.
Right.
Let's say you have the last week of moose season and, when caribou opens up, if it didn't get shut down before that due to, the registration requirements being met.
I think the best opportunity for the highest quality hunt is going to be a fly-in hunt.
I would say I agree with you.
I've flown out a lot into a lot of areas, and the farther away from road systems you get and the harder the access is, especially if you're flying with a transporter, you're not likely going to have anybody else dropped around you anywhere close to you. You're going to be on your own, and you can just find your way.
Yeah.
I would recommend trying to fly in somewhere.
Yeah.
That would be a phenomenal option. And, while you might not be able to get both, you can have a really good high quality hunt for at least one species.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I personally, I would rather be flown into an area and say, look, there aren't many moose around here, but there are a ton of caribou, and there's a lot of caribou right now. Go have a heyday. Or have the opposite and say, look, the caribou aren't in this area right now, but this area is thick with moose. Good luck.
Yeah.
I would rather have a really high quality chance at one or the other than kind of a 50-50 at either one. You never really know what's in here.
Right.
That type of deal. So my personal recommendation, you've got a year or two to plan yet. Start saving your pennies, save up the money, do some calling around, find an area that you want to hunt, find a part of the state and the terrain that you're comfortable with, and then call a transporter and get it booked up.
Yeah.
Start saving your money.
I was going to say, kind of what you just said. I was thinking that if I were to do, even as a resident, if I was going to do a float hunt and target moose and caribou, if I was, say, targeting both of those animals and I was doing a float hunt specifically, I would be working a lot harder, probably working a lot harder to get a moose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the highest return.
That's the highest return, and it can be unless they're right on in the rut when you're hunting them, they can be the harder animal to find.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And get a close on. If
Absolutely.
the caribou are there,
yeah,
you're gonna kill a caribou.
Yeah.
It's just about, especially if you're rifle hunting.
Yeah, and he is.
And,
Right.
and the thing is, like, if you're not picky about how you want to take your caribou, I mean, coming up here for a steez hunt, it's not that hard.
No.
Like, so if you came up and did a dedicated moose hunt in a very dedicated moosey area, and that was your sole purpose.
Right.
And then you came up maybe even in the same year.
Yeah.
And let's say the 40-mile herd stays open for the entire time, and you're able to come back up a couple weeks later or whatever. Or maybe you come back the next year.
Well, if he's back
and
up,
you're able to get up there.
if he's up here for 4 weeks, then he's got time to do a 2-week or 10-day moose hunt.
Right.
And then drive back into town, sleep at a hotel, recharge, wash your clothes, maybe stow your moose meat in a freezer in town. And I've also got a hookup for you there for a local freezer guy that'll stow your game meat for you for a rental fee. And then you can turn around if you have more time to hunt and go out and get a caribou permit for the 40-mile herd.
Yep. It's a real easy walk in, just
go drive out the road and camp for several days until you find a caribou that you can get to, and then just go out and shoot it.
Yeah.
Now that could be a really good option too.
And there is country out there that you can get away from the masses.
Oh,
if you're willing to.
100%.
So it's just,
we've all done that.
If you stay right on the road, you're not going to feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be alone.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I would say if you are trying to target both in one trip, though, look to the mountains.
Yeah.
Look to the higher country.
Look north.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely find, moose pretty much anywhere. They're going to be in the swamps and on the mountains.
But the areas
caribou,
where you can shoot caribou and moose over the counter in the same unit, the same time of year, are a lot more limited.
Yes, they are.
So
but they're also more premium.
Yes, they are.
And
well,
if you reach out and contact, specifically asking those questions, I'll put you in touch with Dalton if you contact through the email or whatever. And you'll get some real good tips and advice from him.
I've got a whole list of people that work.
You talk nice and he likes you. You'll get better information.
Just try not to blow too many things up immediately.
Yeah.
So
there are some things that I like to keep a little bit more under wraps. But if you're serious about coming in and doing a hunt like that, I'd be happy to point you in the right direction.
Everybody knows that one of the most important pieces of a hunter's kit is their knife. Whether you're looking for a fleshing blade, a skinning blade, or just a quality, multi-purpose knife for the backcountry, Yukon River Knives has what you need. They offer blades such as the Hunter, Small Game, and the Sendero Bush Knife. Yukon River Knives is based in Texas and has a unique mission goal in that a percentage of all knife sales go to support a missionary in Alaska. Now, Dalton, you've experience with these knives in the field. Talk to us about that.
As a matter of fact, I have used a few of their knives and watched my good friend Remy use them for years with great results. They have a micarta handle that doesn't get slippery when it gets wet, and they have phenomenal edge retention for long skinning jobs. Go check out our web link on the northernhunter.com, and that'll take you directly to Yukon River Knives website to see their full selection and order your knives for your next hunt with the discount code The Northern Hunter at checkout. And remember, nothing replaces a quality hunting knife.
Hey guys, if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you've likely heard Dalton and I go back and forth about bullet construction and how I like rapid expanding bonded core bullets that leave massive wound channels. I've also stated I would never use a monolithic bullet. Well, I'm here to tell you about the company that finally changed my mind. Hammer Bullets produces what I would consider the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are designed so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, the front half of the bullet explodes, shedding its petals and imparting massive damage to the vital areas while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration, effectively closing the gap between lead core and monolithic construction. The guys at Hammer designed these bullets with 100% focus on how they perform once they reach their destination. But don't let that fool you. These bullets have amazing BCs and have specialized pressure grooves built in for amazing inherent accuracy. They have a minimum velocity rating of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots but have no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity rounds like the Weatherby 3378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. They've also recently partnered with Weatherby to provide factory ammunition for a multitude of cartridges. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com to buy yours today and drop the hammer on your next adventure. So Mo, you want to tackle this last one for us?
Sure. This one might be the most interesting one.
I wanted to save this one for last. It's very entertaining.
So this is from Rose. It's a long email, so I don't think I'm going to read the whole thing. The first sentence is, I absolutely loved your last show, so thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you listening.
And anyhow, so she had a few thoughts and questions about some stuff. She says, you talked about a lot about, we were talking about bears in the last episode she's referencing here, and bear baiting specifically. And she says, you talked a lot about sows versus boars and sows and cubs. Bear baiting in the spring is by far our favorite season, sounds like with most of Alaska. But we always try to get our bears right at the beginning of the season when they first start to come out, generally towards the end of April. Why? Because the boars are the ones to come out first. Mm-hmm. We generally see sows and cubs and the grizzly bears coming out towards the middle or end of May. Mm-hmm. If we get our bears at the beginning of the season, it's almost guaranteed all those bears that are at the bait first are going to be males. That being said, like you guys, black bears are absolutely my favorite animal, and we'll leave the bait up all the way till the end of June. And I'll use all my spare time watching the bears. So they live in the eastern interior on a homestead, out and away from other people.
Yes.
And which is just awesome. I envy them. But there's a lot of truth to the fact that, especially grizzly bears, to address that first, they changed recently locally where last few years, you can hunt grizzly bears over bait.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great. We all got excited, but you could only hunt them in the season that was open for grizzly bears, which closed the end of May.
Right.
Yeah.
Which baiting takes you through the end of June.
Yeah.
I have not had a grizzly bear hit a bait. I've had them hit at the very end of May. I've never had them hit in a time that gave me time to hunt them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I've yet to do it. Hopefully I can change that soon. But so yeah, absolutely with grizzly bears, I've seen the same thing. Mm-hmm. If there's black bears on a bait and grizzly bears, a lot of times black bears will hit the bait first.
Yep.
A lot of the same experiences. Yeah. And a lot of boars hitting it first because the sows have to get moving with the cubs. And
it takes a lot longer to get ready when you got kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Always late for dinner.
That being said, I've seen on multiple baits in an area that are still a long ways away as a crow flies, but kind of in a similar geolocation. I've seen the same sow with 3 small cubs within hours of the times at different baits. And it's just shocked me because you got this big old sow, 3 little cubs crossing the country, 5, 6, 7 miles of not easy country, hills, rivers, swamps.
Yep.
In a matter of hours.
It's amazing how nimble they are when they want to be. It really is.
Another thing she talked about was Dalton. I don't know if you want to say anything about that or
no,
you're
it's good.
Okay.
Yep.
Another thing she talked about was let's see here. While in the tree stand, one thing she's heard, which I'll read this and then and the explanation comes towards the end of the reading here. While in the tree stand, one thing I've heard a lot are goats in the woods. The first time I heard goats in the woods, I was by myself in the tree stand, and it was pretty quiet. Hadn't seen any bears for a while, and I hear goats. I never actually saw any bears come in, and I ended up leaving. That night, I asked my husband, who works for United States or U.S. Fish and Wildlife, United States Fish and Wildlife, what it was that I heard, and I told him very specifically, it sounds just like our goats. And his answer to me was, you heard bear cubs.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is a sound I can readily identify because goats are not something you should be hearing. And, she mentioned you should be careful because there's a sow with cubs nearby. I personally have never associated the sounds of cubs with goats.
I hadn't until I read this email. And as soon as she said that, I'm like, I can see it now.
But yeah, I haven't been around goats hardly at all. I've seen them a few times, and that's about it. So that probably has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
Now, for reference, she's not talking about the screaming goats.
Yeah. No, that's not goats. That's not bear cubs. That's Dalton.
Yeah. If you do hear the screaming goats in the woods, that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd stick around there too much longer.
No.
There's something else going on in those woods.
So a little side story. I was in my bait alone one time, and I heard the eeriest high-pitched screeching I'd ever heard in my life.
Oh boy.
And it was...
It's a mountain lion.
Well, no, close. But, and it freaked me out.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know. I was just in there for a quick trip. I wasn't actually hunting, sitting in the stand. I just brought some dog food in and was just making a dump, checking pictures and things like that. And as I'm getting ready to leave, I mean, literally the most high-pitched scream ever.
Mm-hmm.
And there were multiple of them and kind of going back and forth. And what I found is people were telling me that's the mating sound of lynx.
Yeah.
And it is eerie. When you hear some stuff that you don't know what the heck it is, and you're out in the woods,
it can scare you.
It's not, not to say that we're not prepared, but like, you don't know what you're facing, and it sounds like
you don't know if it sounds like an animal or a spirit.
Well, right, and this is like Bigfoot, like, it sounds like a child being ripped to pieces. It's like
sounds like something
just like makes the hair
movie.
stand up on the back of your neck, man.
Yeah, for sure.
So she mentioned something else related to that I agree with partly, at least from with what I've seen. She says, I know a sow will not bring her cubs to a bait station if there are males in the area. So there's no point in me hunting at that point. I
haven't seen that to be 100% true.
Same here, and that's what I was going to say. I've spent many hours. I was doing the math the other day. And
many moons.
Upwards of 500 hours in a stand.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of time. And obviously there's not bears in there all the time, but that's a lot of time. And looking at game cameras and times they come in, you will see, I've seen a big sow with cubs will chase a boar off.
Yeah.
And the opposite, a boar will chase a sow with cubs off.
Yeah.
And, and there's a lot of times if there's a boar on the bait, I agree. There's a really good chance she's not going to bring her cubs into that.
Right.
But the moment that boar leaves, it may be minutes before she's on that bait with her cubs.
Yeah. She's waiting.
Yeah. And oftentimes they will. They'll literally just sit back in the bushes and wait.
Right.
And stay just far enough away that he's not bothered by them. But
Yeah.
Well, and what bear cubs especially climb trees and they climb them really fast.
Yeah.
And if there's danger, she's just going to send the cubs up the trees.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Bark at them.
We one time, just a little bit of a tangent. We one time were hunting and we had it wasn't a cub. It was just a young bear climb the tree.
Yeah. That was the first time that I had ever been in a stand and had a bear come in. And Mo and I.
Was it really?
Yeah, that was the first year that you and I had been baiting together.
Okay.
And that little color phased bear came in, and we had our other friend with us. There was three of us sitting up in a platform stand with camo netting all around us, and we were about 8 feet off the ground. And the bear trail went right underneath the stand up to the bait. And, sometimes they would come in up behind the bait. Sometimes they'd come in underneath the stand. It just depended on how much they circled for wind.
Right.
And this particular bear came in underneath the stand, and it looked up at us, and then it walked over towards the bait, and then it sat down and scratched his butt for a minute. We were all laughing, just being teenagers and just being entertained.
Our buddy was, his name is Baz, and he had a very hard time not laughing so loud.
He was actually like cracking up, laughing,
like almost belly laughing.
Yeah, and we were like, "Shut up!" And, so and this bear looks at us, and he walks over underneath the stand, and he kind of got all stealthy looking. He's just like looking at us out of the top of his eye sockets, and he creeps up, thinking he's sneaking up on us. And then I had my at the time I had a .44 Magnum revolver. And my recurve bow.
That's right.
And Mariah was up to shoot. It was his shot first, and he had his bow and a handgun as well. I think you had a Taurus Judge.
I did.
And we were sitting in this platform stand, and I was on the far right side. No, I was in the middle. Mariah was on the left, and our friend Basil was on the right. And the bear climbed up the tree underneath the stand and stuck his head underneath of Basil's chair and rested his chin on the plywood and just looked at us. And it's right underneath our buddy that's sitting there. And I had my handgun out, and I was turned around, hammer back right at the thing's forehead, because he was inches away. Had he decided that he wanted to rip that chair right out of the tree, he could have, and I didn't know.
Right.
And the whole time, Mariah's like, "Don't you dare shoot that bear! Don't you dare!" And he eventually, I think I made like a shoot, and he just looked and just turned around and walked, climbed back down the tree, and then he walked over to the bait, and Mariah shot him, and he went 10 yards and died. But back to what you were saying earlier, though, about sows and cubs and boars interacting at bait sites. I have seen that multiple times where it's a size difference thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I've got a big sow with cubs and there's an adolescent or 3-year-old bear by itself that I believe is a boar that's on the bait, oftentimes the sow will come in and push that bear off. I don't think that it's so much she doesn't want to be around a single male that might kill the cubs. I think it's around, I don't think she wants to be around a male that she feels could beat her in a fight and kill her cubs. And I think she knows when she walks in, she can smell if a bear is a boar, obviously.
Yep.
But then she can also get in there and look at it. And if the boar is of size and he knows it and he can smell a sow with cubs, he'll pretty quickly assert himself as the dominant guy, and he'll make a run at her and try to catch her or one of the cubs and fight her off.
And if you look that up, I mean, you can find some crazy videos of interactions between boars and sows at baits. I guess I just wanted to say I've seen that to be true for the most part, where they don't. I mean, obviously, they don't interact. I've never seen two adult bears on a bait and then some cubs. Never. Yeah. It's all just the sow and her cubs. She doesn't trust anybody else. Right.
With that in mind, just because there is a lone boar at the bait, as long as she thinks she can take him, she's going to try. Because that's free food. And we mentioned this in one of our previous episodes. That bait is just a kill site for them. It's just easy food. It's an easy place to come back and get more and more food. And they will absolutely fight over it.
And the longer you do it, the more years you go back to the same place. I mean, that's just, you're just going to get more and more because they're going to remember it's there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And no, one thing she said I found interesting and I have found to be true is the sense of associated danger with humans, depending on the region, how close you are to a city or a town, when you're doing your hunting. And I found that to be absolutely true. There is a huge behavioral difference between whether it's bears or even moose, when you're far out somewhere and you actually put in the work to get somewhere farther away, or if you're just, running around the back roads of Fairbanks, there's even the way the bears act at a bait, when they know it's easy food. It's the term we use is bait smart. It's like they might not know exactly what it is, but they know that it's not exactly the safest place in the world. Yeah. Whereas if you get out, farther away, out into the far reaches of the wilderness, where they they're just going to come right in. Like they don't care. Like you said, I mean, they'll come rest their head right on your stand. Yep. Or, just hang out and stare at you. Right. It's like they don't really associate you with anything. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's been fascinating for me too. Is how smart, specifically black bears. I mean, and also moose and everything, but specifically black bears, they're just so intelligent. And it's one reason I love them so much. Yeah. Yeah. Just like she said, she mentioned that she loves just sitting on the bait, even if she doesn't have a bear that she wants to shoot in particular. Mm-hmm. She just go sit there and watch bears, and I can attest that is just an absolute blast. Yeah, there's nothing like sitting
under 20 yards away from a bear or multiple bears at a bait, and watching them interact, and watching a sow interact with cubs and learning what noises they make and how they communicate. I've had several different black bear sows come in on baits, and they'll come in all chill and they not a care in the world. And she'll eat a little bit. The cubs will eat. They'll mess around a little bit. The cubs will start playing and fighting with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, mom perks up. The wind shifts. She gets a sniff of something that she doesn't like, and she makes a little noise, just a little grunt or a little click or a little pop of her teeth.
Yeah.
And immediately, like you flip a switch, those cubs are 20 feet up a tree, just gone. And then she, hunches her shoulders up and pigeon toe walks around the bait like she's the big dominant bear, and she's trying to push whatever she doesn't like away to defend her cubs. But that is just really neat to listen to. And then how the cubs talk back to her, and then she responds. And then it's like they ping each other as she's walking around looking for whatever she smelled. And in this particular event that I'm talking about, she had sent her cubs up a tree next to me, next to my stand. And she never saw me. She never looked at me.
Right.
But she could smell something was off. And she kept walking circles, 20, 30 yards around. And the cubs kept making noises every time I would move with my phone to take pictures of them. And they would make a little bawl or a little noise.
He's right here, Mom.
Or a little grunt. And the sow would immediately respond with something and then come walking back in and look and look and look. And she never looked up and saw me. It was very valuable just listening to that interaction. I find that kind of stuff fascinating.
Yeah. And arguably that's probably the best part about, killing bears is awesome too. Don't get me wrong. And I love eating bear, but shooting
a bear is a very short event. You shoot them, they're dying, they're done. It's over just like that. It's over in minutes if you do it right. Right. And but sitting at a stand over the course of a bear baiting season in our spring, you get to see multiple bears and watch them for 20, 30 minutes at a time. You just learn so much. But
anyway. I was just gonna say,
I think we're.
What are we at on time?
I think we're.
Oh man,
hour
look at
45.
This one. Hour 45.
Yeah.
I
say she mentioned. She talked about the fear of not associating us with danger necessarily, maybe being further from Fairbanks. I will say I don't think I've seen a difference further from Fairbanks or close to Fairbanks in the number of sows and cubs that I've seen on my baits personally. Also, she mentioned something that I thought was kind of cool. She says she's had wolves walk right up to her in the dark, and they trap them, but they work very hard to keep the scent and everything. You can't trap wolves with human scent around as it is. They're very smart, but they do everything they can to keep them not associated with danger. So that they don't to help keep from having issues with them.
Yeah,
I think it's really cool. Rose, I read your email, and I looked you up a little bit because I saw your email was a business name. And looks like you got some cool stuff going on. I really like the idea that guys homesteading out there.
Yeah.
You and your husband would like to come on the podcast, we'd love to have you talk about some of your experiences with.
I was going to send him an email right now, actually,
with bear hunting and all of that. And I think you have a book out. And if you want to come on and talk about that, we'd be happy to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have you in the studio and buy you guys lunch or something and talk about it and make a show about that. People. This is something that we're all very interested in. Right. All three of us love that kind of
lifestyle,
hearkening to older times, if you will. People that just live off the land and kind of away from society and just live a subsistence type of life and hunt, fish, trap for a living. Essentially, that's awesome, and I'm glad that's still possible to do. And in this day and age, you can still do that in Alaska.
Yeah.
Right. And that's great.
We'd love to talk more and kind of get your perspective on that. So, but I think that wraps up listener questions. I think we are caught up now. So if you wrote into us, this week, before you hear this recording, then we're recording this early in the week. So if you wrote us in on a Thursday or something like that, we will get to it as soon as we can.
Yep.
And by all means, absolutely, send us any question you can possibly think of, anything you have a curiosity about, or quit the feral cow thing, just a weird thing you may have heard. We will look into it and give you the best information we can. So
absolutely,
you guys Have any final thoughts?
Well, a few weeks ago, we had a little bonus segment at the end I came up with. It was about these
Moe's bonus.
The African rifle collection.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
this is kind of more Dalton's bonus segment because he gave me the news the other day. But,
Yeah.
Credit where credit's due.
Yeah,
Well, then can I give the number then?
absolutely.
So I was keeping up with the SCI banquet that was going on. I believe it happened in Nashville this year.
Yep.
And on Sunday, I saw on social media that the SCI African Rifle Collection, 5 rifles, sold for $675,000.
Mm.
That comes out to a nice, pretty penny of $135,000 per gun. And that all goes to support a good cause with SCI, no doubt. And I that level of craftsmanship and the engraving and the gold inlays, that is a one of a kind set for those 5 guns.
Do you
That's
have the
awesome.
name of who purchased them?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd publish that.
Yeah.
Well,
I
it
don't
depends
know.
on if you wanted to be known or not.
I'm not
Right.
sure.
I think if I bought them, I might not mind my name being out there. But
So-
if he's interested in coming on our podcast, we'd be
Oh,
glad
yeah.
to have you.
You know, kind of on the topic, not hunting rifles, but I was just reading something earlier today, and there was some historic revolvers that were sold.
Oh,
Now, they were,
Where?
one was the revolver of Ulysses S. Grant.
at the
So-
SCI convention?
No. This
Oh, okay.
is a historic firearm sales.
Okay, so this is James' bonus.
That was just a little tag on it.
Okay.
Well, we're calling it James bonus now.
Guess what his revolver sold for? Just take a wild gander.
Ulysses Grant revolver.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Was it used in the Civil War?
can we do this a contest? One of us is going to
that
win.
part I don't know.
Make a
actually.
guess.
So the
It
one,
was very fancy looking, I'll say that.
whichever was closer to the number will win.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We'll owe each other a sandwich at Arby's.
All right, sounds good.
Shake. All right.
All
We're
right,
shaking.
it's official. I witnessed it.
All right. $200,000.
$300,000.
Whew. I mean, by a large margin, you're both off. But Dalton, you are going to be buying Moa
Oh,
sandwich.
okay.
So
It sold for $5.17 million.
$5.17 million.
The collectible firearms industry is huge,
I
man.
knew it was
That
huge,
is-
but man,
yeah. They sold another one. I want to say it was Roosevelt's.
Oh,
And that one
man.
went for, I want to say, somewhere in the 3 million mark. I don't remember the exact number in my head.
Wow.
man,
But
that'd be a
yeah.
hard question. Would you rather Teddy Roosevelt?
100%.
Ooh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
I would
Teddy
say
Roosevelt or
OTR.
Ulysses Grant? Which revolver would you rather own?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, yeah.
Absolutely.
How much do you guys know about Grant?
I don't care.
I
You don't know enough.
Teddy Roosevelt.
I know he was the
Africa.
general in the Civil War on the Union side. That's about it.
There's a
He was
lot more
president.
about the man and his ways that are very interesting. And
Yeah.
Well-
I know very little about Grant compared to Roosevelt. You know, Roosevelt,
I
obviously,
love Roosevelt. too.
big time hunter, big time personality.
Yeah.
He's an interesting cat. He did some crazy stuff on hunts and expeditions around the world. I would want Roosevelt.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, so if you guys can't tell, we're not only hunting enthusiasts, but also general firearm enthusiasts.
Well, Teddy
so-
Roosevelt, if you're listening to this podcast, we'd love to have you come on the show.
If anybody
Gotta
knows
get
him, yeah.
Get a Ouija board for that one.
Oh boy,
But-
yeah. Now we're diving off.
Now we're
the deep
diving
end.
off.
Oh,
Well,
boy.
anyway, guys, we hope you like the show. Again, if you guys have any questions, any kind of, curiosities you might have about hunting in the state, we
Yeah.
love answering these questions, and we will try to get to them as soon as we can with anything you guys might ask.
Now,
And-
I do have one more thing to add.
Oh, sure.
While on your hunt in Alaska,
Mm.
please go to Stealthy Hunter's website and purchase a rifle cover and glassing pad
Yep. Very
From-
comfortable glass.
from the Stealthy Hunter website and use the promo code
The Northern Hunter.
the Northern Hunter at checkout, and you get a
Mhm.
discount on your order.
Yep.
And One of our listeners that wrote in his question, he mentioned that he's in good physical condition.
Yeah.
Well, if you come up here and shoot a moose on your DIY hunt, you're going to be pretty sore. So you're going to want to get some supplements.
And
to
those
help
joints
yourself
are
out.
going to be hurting.
Get some supplements. I actually just got some in the mail from Ryan the other day, and I am stoked to be experimenting with some of those gummies and supplements and whatnot.
Yeah.
For joint pains, and that's. Hunting in Alaska is a physical sport, man.
Yep.
It's it'll wear you out.
I need to look into those because hauling hundreds of pounds of dog food into the woods this coming spring is man.
The joints are aching.
I'm gonna want some of that joint.
Yeah,
joint stuff.
Absolutely.
Turmeric.
So yeah, go shop at Stealthy Hunter's website. We would appreciate you using the Northern Hunter discount code at checkout.
Yeah.
That'll help out the podcast.
It will.
It really does. Yeah.
And it also helps out a great friend in the industry, Ryan Lampers, and his family.
Yeah.
So go over and do that.
All right, guys. Well, if you like the show, as always, give us a like, follow the show on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and share it with your friends, man. Send it to as many people as you can because we're trying to help as many as we can. So
we appreciate you.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. And we'll see you next week.
Shoot big guns, kill big bears.
And that's how the cookie crumbled.